One state that's a toss-up, and that would be Ohio.
The Real Clear Politics average there has Republican challenger Bernie Moreno within striking distance of Democrat Senator Sherrod Brown, less than 3 points apart.
So Politico obtained a memo from the National Republican Senatorial Committee, and it's betting that the best GOP chances of flipping the Senate lies in the Rust Belt. That would be Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and the greatest of them all, Wisconsin.
In Wisconsin, Democrat Senator Tammy Baldwin is polling just 3 points ahead of Republican banker who we've interviewed several times, Eric Hovde.
Really close. And in Michigan, it's a similar story. Congresswoman Elise Slotkin, also less than 3 points ahead of former Congressman Mike Rogers. This week, the two squared off over electric vehicles.
I don't care what kind of car you want to drive. I don't drive an EV. I live on a dirt road, on a farm. That's not likely in my future. But if the fundamental question is who do we want to make that next generation of vehicles, you better believe I want that to be Michigan and not China. And by the way, it also means saving auto jobs. We saved the 700 jobs that are at that plant because we're upgrading it.
This is really important. What a candidate says and what they do when they're in office for the last 5 years, really, really important. And my opponent signs an NDA that allows a Chinese battery company to go to outside of Goshen in order to facilitate her votes on EV mandates. You're promoting Chinese technology in America. It's wrong.
Not to sound like a broken record, but in Pennsylvania, it's also a 3-point gap between Democrat Bob Casey and Republican Dave McCormick. Bob's the incumbent. The two going head-to-head on energy at last night's debate.
Well, of the many dumb Biden-Harris-Casey policies, our energy policy is probably the worst because we've restricted our natural gas ability to export, drill, and have pipelines for natural gas with EPA mandates, with all these huge subsidies to China for lithium batteries and solar panels. So we've depressed our natural gas here in Pennsylvania when it's the key to economic growth.
Well, what he's making reference to is legislation that allows us, through tax credits, to invest in a clean energy economy. That's creating lots of jobs all across, thousands of jobs already in Pennsylvania. Many more jobs in red states than blue states, by the way.
Before turning it over to our next guest, we've got to give a shout out to Texas. Someday we'll need to tally how much money Democrats have spent trying to flip Ted Cruz's Senate seat. Last night he debated his latest challenger, Congressman Colin Allred.
Senator Cruz just called himself pro-life. You're not. You're not pro-life.
Congressman Allred has voted to tell you, a mother at home, you have no right to know if your daughter's getting an abortion.
For more, let's bring in Coign CEO and founder Rob Collins. He's also the former executive director of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, which works to get Republicans elected to the Senate. Rob, good to see you. Thanks for being with us. So, again, we covered some of these races. We kind of think you're the expert. You know these races very well. Where do you see the state of play? Where does the Senate end up after November 5th?
Well, I think everyone feels really comfortable with a GOP majority. Montana has slipped out of the Democrats' hands. Ohio is moving in the wrong direction for them, even though they're outspending our candidate 5-1. And then you look at the Rust Belt, your former state. I love Eric Hovde. He's running a great campaign. He's got that hockey dad hair. He looks the state. He's running a heck of a race. Mike Rogers working hard in Michigan. I talked to some grizzled veterans of Michigan earlier this week, and they are impressed by how hard he's working. All these campaigns are getting outspent. Obviously, the Democrats have a ton of money. They have the incumbents, but I feel really good. And Dave McCormick, he's been all over that state. He's got a heck of a story. He's got a great team, plenty of money, looking good. I think the biggest thing is, how's Trump going to do on Election Day in their state? Can he help drag some of these folks over the finish line? And, what's the turnout operation going to look like? Are we going to get enough of our folks out to vote early and really make sure we get our low propensity voters to the polls? That's the key.
On the issues, and we just kind of hit some of the greatest hits in those clips that we played. In Michigan, the electric vehicle mandate, for one, Alyssa Slotkin and Kamala Harris trying to act like, oh, you can drive whatever kind of car you want. No, you can't, not if they're in charge. And then energy, hydraulic fracturing, particularly in Pennsylvania. Kamala Harris wanted to just ban it. Which of those issues, or even another one that we didn't even touch on, are really hot buttons for many of those states?
Well, when I was running the committee, the biggest thing we always did was find the big national issues and then localize it. So what they're doing is that, economy, inflation, is my family better off, is top of the mind for all voters, especially critical swing voters and low propensity voters. And what you saw with Mike Rogers, Dave McCormick, they're taking local issues, jobs in fracking, jobs in the auto industry, and saying, you know what? The Democrats have been in charge of the White House 12 of the last 16 years. They've been in charge of the Senate. Things have gotten worse, and they don't have a plan. I do.
So Rob, kind of the Rust Belt that we talked about, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, the Republican candidates are all down about 3 points, and that's within the margin of error of the polling. But it begs the question, we're a couple weeks away from Election Day, and is there enough time, number one, for these candidates to make up that difference? And what advice would you have for them? Listen, it's like you're down by a couple points. You got to make that up. What do they have to do to get those extra votes in to be victorious on election night?
Yeah, well, there's no sleeping. You're going to focus on your key issues. Give folks a reason to vote for you and not just vote against the Democrat. And 3, you got to hope Trump wins your state. In the last 16 years, one candidate, Susan Collins, has won her state when the Democrats have won statewide. Trump's got to win these states, and he's up in all the states we just mentioned in the polling and looking good. And Trump always underpolls and overperforms on Election Day, so you just got to ride that wave.
What about
no mistakes? No mistakes. That's the other big one. No mistakes.
What about Colin Allred and Ted Cruz? The Democrats love to salivate over Ted Cruz possibly losing, but I saw one ad, and it was about allowing biological men to compete in girls' sports, and it was put out by an outside group, but it was devastating to Colin Allred.
Ted Cruz he knows Texas. He's one of the greatest debaters. He understands what people are concerned about. And if you saw the debate last night, you saw his message mirror that ad where he really honed in and really went after Colin Allred about the transgender issue. And I think that's going to be a closing issue in Texas. I think he's going to do very well. And I think he wins that state. And you're right. Democrats, like they used to about North Carolina and before that Ohio, they pour tons of resources into that state, but they can't beat Ted Cruz.
Two words, Beto O'Rourke, right?
Exactly.
He is just a money suckhole.
Well, you prefer the money spent in Texas than in Ohio or Michigan or Wisconsin, so Let them spend it on Ted Cruz. Money well spent for Democrats. Coign CEO Rob Collins, thanks for being with us. Always grateful.
Thank you.
Great to see you, Rob. Straight ahead, Trump.